I will talk to you people on trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder in psychology, that is called PTSD, in the novel Homeboy, written by H M Naqvi. So first, if you allow me, let me give you a brief overview of my presentation, what I'm going to talk about. First of all, I will have a few words on post 9/11 event, its consequences, and how it globally affected the lives of millions of people all across the world. After it, I will relate this event with post 9/11 fiction. And then, of course, I will give a brief introduction of this novel, Homeboy, because there might be the people who might not have read this novel. And then, after discussing trauma theory and PTSD, I will share with you the analysis of this novel in the light of trauma and PTSD, up to my understanding of it. So let's move on. You all know that on September 11, 2001, World Trade Center and Pentagon were attacked and bombed with aeroplanes, and many people died in the consequence of these attacks. It has been 21 years when America and world were hit by a terror attack of a new and unknown quality. Allegedly, Muslim terrorists belonging to bin Laden's terror network Al Qaeda, who hijacked several plans to use them as lethal weapons against America and her symbolic role as a country of freedom and democracy, started a new era of political, social, and religious uproar and chaos inexperienced so far. I have used the word allegedly. You know that there are different conspiracy theories regarding this event. Some of the theorists are of the view that Muslims were not at all involved in these terrorist attacks, and bin Laden group was blamed for these terrorist attacks just for nothing. And they do have justifications for these claims as well, that there are different conspiracy theories behind these attacks. Whatsoever it does, some of the people say that CIA launched this operation against Muslims on a large scale, and Muslims were not at all involved in these terrorist attacks. Whatsoever it does, this is another debate. The chaos and disturbance was resulted in Gulf wars that were to follow, are the ongoing wars in Libya, Syria, Iraq, or Afghanistan, and migration waves to Europe. Sir, there was a survey that was conducted soon after 9/11, the Gallup survey, and that Gallup survey said that about 40% people from America, means to say that 40% Americans were least willing to fly through airplanes, and about 32% people or 33% people, I don't remember exactly what was the figure, that it was 22 or 32 or 33% people, they were not willing to step out of their homes to attend the parties, to go anywhere to attend the functions. And what they did was that they held Muslims responsible for this unrest and this condition. And you know that when these kind of surveys were made public through internet, and Muslim youth, when they read these surveys, and when they came to know that we are being held responsible for these attacks and for this unrest and for this plight, so it psychologically affected them. There was a great psychological effect on the Muslims because of these surveys as well. So now I'm moving towards a post 9/11 fiction. You know that the literature that has been written after 9/11 is subjected to fabricated stories, that is subjected to ideologies, that is subjected to knowledge production as well. Writers, whether they are from West or whether they are from East, or you know that they are from other parts of the world, they incorporated this event and they used this event in the plot and in the setting of their stories. The fact that the writers from East and West incorporated this key date into their novels threw light on the fact that 9/11 did not only function as global, national, collective, religious, or individual trauma, it also showed its widespread application for plot, character, constellations, speech, and reception of many authors. So the introduction and employment of 9/11 into contemporary literature slowly but steadily showed its ongoing importance for contemporary writing. And so Western writers used this event and incorporated it in the plot of their stories in order to reinforce the stereotypes against Muslims. And they also used this key date in their works in knowledge production as well. So, and Muslim scholars and Muslim writers have been struggling, and they are struggling, and they are struggling still with using this event to justify their position as victims. So now let me introduce this novel with the members who have not read this novel. This novel is about immigrants, three Pakistani immigrants who have settled themselves down in America, and they are living a very happy, healthy, and a very smiley life. They are living a very peaceful life over there. And then catastrophe of 9/11 happens, and their lives are changed altogether. And they have to face individual trauma as well as collective trauma. So Homeboy is H M Naqvi's debut novel, which won DSC Prize for South Asian Literature. The story is narrated by Chuck, 21-year old from Karachi, who has been in New York for 4 years and gains a degree in English literature. He becomes part of an inseparable trio with the AC. His name is Ali Chaudhry, a rogue, and Jimbo. His name is Jamshed, who is a DJ and son of a Pakistani immigrant to New Jersey. At the start of the novel, life is calm, as I'm saying that it was a sweet life. Chuck works in a bank and cherishes free hours either in bar with AC or with Jimbo's family. And then the catastrophe of 9/11 occurs. People with dark skins are viewed with suspicion. Hatred against Muslims in America reaches its climax. So Chuck loses his job and he's put behind the bars. When he is released, he is totally a changed person. So post-traumatic effect of this incident changed his life. In fact, this post 9/11 personal trauma of Chuck represents the collective trauma of entire Muslim community in America. So moving ahead, first let me explain that what is trauma theory and what is trauma in literature, and what is post-traumatic stress disorder. Originally, the word trauma is derived from the Greek word traumatizo, which means wound. It's a piercing of the skin, the splitting of the skin, a sudden splitting of the skin, a breaking of the bodily envelope. This is what Garland says. Metaphorically speaking, what trauma is that it's a splitting of the heart. I would say that sudden splitting of the heart, bleeding of the soul, when your consciousness is shaken to the core, as someone has stabbed a dagger in your heart, when you are not expecting it, and your mind is bleeding, your heart is bleeding, your soul is wounded, and you are left with an absolute agony. So this is actually the trauma. But trauma may not be related to a biological condition or with just a medical condition. Trauma in literature is that when one experiences, I would say, a great loss, and particularly loss of identity. He has to reconstruct his identity. He has to define his identity, and he has to redefine his identity, because in trauma theory, identity and memory, these are very crucial. Contemporary literary theory, it asserts that trauma creates a speechless fight that divides and destroys the identity. And as I'm saying that trauma in literature is not just a medical condition, or it's not just a biological condition. It's a political and social and religious condition too. A location of the mind of the character is something which gets reflection in the fiction, and it can be seen and understood in the context of political and religious issues as well. So if you have read, if the members and the scholars, you have gone through the writings of Sadat Hasan Manto, and if you read his short stories, particularly Toba Taxing and Cold Meat, in the context of political issues, in the context of partition, and in the context of migration, that you come to know, then you come to know about the trauma and its application in literature. Memory has also a vital role in trauma fiction. Memory of any tragic event or war that keeps haunting the characters in the fiction. You might have gone through that novel by Virginia Woolf, To the Lighthouse. There is a character, Mrs. Dalloway, that also reflects PTSD, though at that time this term was unknown to the people. And in the novel written by Mohsin Hamid, the reluctant fundamentalist, character Chengiz, he also undergoes the same situation. And there is a novel, The Kite Runner, there is a character Amir. He also undergoes this trauma. So this trauma may be regarded as interdisciplinary course, so which involves which involves ideology, which involves ontology, epistemology, memory studies, even fiction, psychology, philosophy, politics, geography. So this is an interdisciplinary, I would say, that course. So Sigmund Freud, what Sigmund Freud says in Beyond the Pleasure Principle, he says that trauma is a mental disturbance of survivors of devastating events which involve a risk of life, such as railway disasters, accidents, or the terrible war which has just ended. So although the concept of trauma is from psychoanalysis and psychotherapy, over the past century, trauma has also become a key term in cultural criticism and literary theory. In Unclaimed Experience, trauma, and this is a very important work, Unclaimed Experience, Trauma Narrative and History. Kathy Karath, one of the most innovative scholars on trauma theory, defines trauma as the response to an unexpected and overwhelming violent event or events that are not fully grasped at that as the time when they occur, but return later in repeated flashbacks, nightmares, or other repetitive phenomena. Individual trauma and collective trauma. There is a writer, K. Erikson. K. Erikson differentiates between individual trauma and collective trauma in a way that she says that individual trauma is a sudden, massive blow to one's psyche, with the, I would say that with such a brutal force that one is unable to react to. So individual trauma is a kind of sudden blow, and as far as collective trauma is concerned, then basic tissues of a social body are damaged, and community, I would say that does not remain community. I repeat that community does not remain a community. I mean that sense of community vanishes. I would explain it in a way that individual exists, but community doesn't. Individual is existing, but community is not existing. Metaphorically speaking and philosophically speaking, as an individual has his self, in the same way, a community too has a self, a collective self. So in collective trauma, a collective self of the society gets damaged. Just have a look at the exact words of K. Erikson to develop more understanding of it. That by individual trauma, I mean a blow to the psyche that breaks through one's defenses so thoroughly and with such a brutal force that one cannot react to it effectively. And by collective trauma, on the other hand, I mean a blow to basic tissues of social life that damages the bonds attaching people together and impairs, destroys the prevailing sense of community. The collective trauma works its way slowly and even insidiously into the awareness of those who suffer from it, does not have the quality of suddenness normally associated with the trauma. But it is a form of shock all the same, a gradual realization that the community no longer exists as an effective source of support and that an important part of the self has disappeared. What is there is that I continue to exist, though damaged and maybe even permanently damaged. You continue to exist, though distant and hard to relate to, but we no longer exist as a connected pair or as linked cells in a larger communal body, in a larger social body. We do not exist. You may be existing, I may be existing, though may be damaged, but we do not exist. And now let me move towards the analysis of this novel, Homeboy, in the light of this trauma. Protagonist of the novel, Chuck and his friends considered themselves Renaissance men before experiencing trauma. This is their pre-trauma life, the life before facing that trauma of 9/11. They are happy, they are in peace. Above all, they have synchronized themselves in American life. They have assimilated themselves into American culture and in American society. What they say is that we had become Japs, Jews, niggers. We were self-invented and self-made, and certainly we had our fingers on the pulse of the great global dialectic. We listened to Nusrat and new generation of native rockers. But what this all shows is that before 9/11 trauma, the life of the characters is quite peaceful. They are over the moon, enjoying parties, enjoying music, drinking alcohol in American society, and listening to the songs, whether these are classical or native modern or rockers. And secondly, synchronizing themselves with American culture and American society, they have become alienated with their past. They have forgotten their past, whether they might be having miseries back at their homes in Pakistan, but they have forgotten each and everything. And what they say is that just see, I had claimed the city, and city had claimed me. You can give it any name, best possibly assimilation. Uh, they take all Papa's houses, we are living, we are American. These three sentences showcase that how liberal they all are. And marrying a girl from Ipanema, Chuck believes that he would become a bona fide American. There is a character, a girl from Ipanema. He develops intimacy with her, and he wants to marry with her so that he may become a bona fide American. So it manifests that pre-trauma life of Chuck is full of fun and amusement. This is a life of colorful dreams. So then how and when alteration comes in the consciousness? It comes after the event of 9/11. The tragic event of 9/11 changes the lives of the characters altogether. Life loses its color for them. They are suspected. Here, Chuck tries to redefine his position in America. And let me make it clear that this redefinition of his self is not based on his personal goals, personal ambitions, and personal dreams. This redefinition is in the context of his political position, his cultural position in American community. So as I have written here, that this redefinition would not be based upon his personal dreams, but would be impelled by the political and religious machinery of post 9/11 USA. Hence, Chuck's consciousness is rocking back and forth, just like a pendulum, neither here nor there, nor this nor that. He is mere an attenuated entity, a weakened entity. Chuck's trauma arises when his already disturbed consciousness receives an other massive blow when he is arrested while looking for his lost friend Shaman, who was gone missing since 9/11. Their friend Shaman was missing after the event of 9/11, and these friends were searching him, and they were beaten up by the gang of bar brawlers. This incident not only rattles him physically, but also mentally. And what he says is that that night would stand out in the skyline of my memory. And yes, exactly, this night stays in the skyline of his memory, just like in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder. When bar brawlers ask him the questions whether they are Arabs, just see the pronunciation. Muslim, the following response of the Turk shows his traumatic condition. He says that repeating the word in my head, I realized it was the first time I had heard it spoken that way, like a dagger thrust and turned. The first time anything like this had happened to us at all. So these were not only the words, these were like the bombs which had blasted on them. These words were like the dagger that thrust and turned. And when he was beaten up and he had fallen unconscious, he was in a very pitiable and precarious condition. And when he regains his consciousness, he says that I didn't know where and who I was. So in this sentence, where and who, these are very important. These are very significant in this context. Symbolically, Chuck actually doesn't know from where he belongs to, or even if he knows that he belongs to Pakistan, he belongs to America. Even if he knows it, he's unaware of it. He's unaware of his true belonging at present. Rootless he is, baseless he is, and here not only where, there is also added who with it. It means that this traumatic situation, Chuck is neither aware of his true belonging nor his true identity. It seems as if he were in some kind of trance. He's completely lost. And exactly this is what it happens in trauma. Your senses and your nerves do not remain in your control, and you're unable to react effectively to that situation. I would say that the wounds and the scars on the soul are more lethal and more dangerous than the bodily wounds. Even your bodily wounds do not push you into psychological trauma unless you experience any psychological blow. So I would justify it exactly what I'm saying through the remarks of Lenore Terr. Lenore Terr, a child psychiatrist who did the first longitudinal study of traumatized children, writes that psychic trauma occurs when a sudden, unexpected, and overwhelming, intense emotional blow or a series of blows assault the person from outside, and traumatic events are external, but these quickly become incorporated in the mind. So moving ahead, post-traumatic stress disorder. Let me first explain what is post-traumatic stress disorder. I will ask that whether I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, you are. Please keep up.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it's audible.
Okay, in post-traumatic stress order and disorder, what psychology says is that it's a mental and psychological disorder that one develops, who experiences shocking, scary, or I would say a dangerous event. And effect of trauma, this is important to know that effect of trauma remains in the mind even after traumatic situation is over. The victim relives the event through the constant flashbacks, and I would say nightmares, and he feels fear, anger, and sadness. I mean that he cannot get rid of the horrible thoughts that the traumatic event, and in the consequence of that traumatic event. And exactly this is what it happens with Chuck. Psychological effects of 9/11 trauma on Chuck are pretty hard to get rid of, or to suppress them and to suppress his feelings. So the traumatic effect is of this event is like an intruder or ghost. It keeps influencing Chuck's normal life. He constantly suffers from the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. What I'm saying, that in the form of flashbacks, in the form of nightmares, distracted mind, identity crisis, hypervigilance, or disturbed sleep. When he makes a cigarette for himself, he smokes it, and he nodded to the heavens as if in prayer. Rind ke rind rahe haath se jannat na gayi. And how this personal trauma leads to collective trauma. 9/11 Islamophobic forces which are at play in the novel worsen the impact of individual trauma of Chuck as well as collective trauma of the entire Muslim community. Being a Muslim is enough to be a terrorist in post 9/11 American community. There is a conversation between Chuck and the investigator. Just see this conversation. The investigator asks him, "So you read Quran? Just see the pronunciation of Quran." He says, "I have read it." Then he asks, "And pray 5 times a day to Allah? Just see the pronunciation of Allah." "No, sir. I pray several times a year on specific occasions like Eid." He says, "Drink?" He replies, "Yes, sir." "Won't Allah get mad? What's important to him?" He says, "Well, I suppose that I'm good to people. I want to know, does Quran sanction terrorism?" He says that I have read it. I'm no terrorist. Now, what conclusion the investigator draws out of this conversation? He draws the conclusion that the boy is excitable. He defended Islamic religion, terrorism. The boy is excitable, and he has defended Islamic religion. And what is that Islamic religion? That is terrorism. So ironically, Islam is being taken as synonym for terrorism. A close reading of this conversation suggests that it's not merely Chuck who is made the other of USA. Islam too has been made other. And broadly speaking, this is Western episteme, that what is outside the West, that they dub as rest. Rest is chaotic, rest is irrational, rest is uncivilized, rest is uneducated. So that's another debate. So Islam has also been made other in USA. So here, this is a collective trauma of entire Muslims. This is the collective trauma of the entire Muslim community of the world. Now, what happens in the course of the story is that American media exaggerates the things regarding Muslims. Everything on the media, there are fabricated reports which psychologically affect the consciousness of the Muslims. And this is not only American government and American media. As many people here in Pakistan, we think that American government and American media only exploited this situation, and American people and American public is quite good, and they are not against Muslims. But here in this novel, not only American government and American media, but also general public of America, the masses of America, they have also stood up against Muslims and Muslim community. They are expelled from their jobs. They are not given work. They have been homogenized altogether. So all the Muslims have been homogenized, irrespective of the fact whether they are living in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in America, or in Saudi Arabia, or any other part of the world. If you are Muslim, you are a terrorist, and they are considered responsible for the social and political instability in America. What I deduce out of it is that as a teacher, as a student, as a researcher, is that Muslims have become a business. Muslims have become an enterprise for American government, American media, and American politicians. Just yes, the business and enterprise. As far as American politics is concerned, I'm recalling in my mind the words of a senator from Ohio. He spoke these words some 100 years ago regarding American politics. He said that there are two things which are very important in politics. One is money, and the other I don't remember. So money is the most important thing in American politics, and they made money out of this business, the business regarding Muslims, and it's true even after 100 years have passed. So moving ahead in toward the end, in absolute agony and trauma, Chuck decides to return back to Pakistan, and he calls his mother and he asks her that I want to come home. And toward the end of the novel, we see that Chuck receives a call from a prestigious organization, and the caller is notifying him about his qualification for a vacant position, but he does not listen to complete conversation of that caller, and he hangs up the call. And then when it was time to go, he says, I left. And this is the second last slide, that collective trauma of Muslim community. So this is not the trauma of Chuck. This is the trauma of entire Muslim community. A collective trauma is a traumatic psychological effect shared by a group of people are experienced by the entire society. So traumatic events witnessed by an entire society can stir up collective sentiment, as we see, often resulting in a shift in that society's culture and mass actions. So collective trauma brought by 9/11 not only influenced the life of American Muslim community, but also its traumatic effects can be seen in the lives of other Muslims all across the world. So the oppressive and brutal treatment of American government and world media towards Muslims have pushed them into post-traumatic stress disorder and constant depression and inferiority complex. And let me conclude this talk. There is a critic, Judith Herman, in trauma and recovery states that remembering and telling the truth. And let me tell you that like Judith Herman, there are many other critics in clinical psychology who suggest that one can shake off the traumatic effects if one keeps telling the truth. So if you keep telling the truth regarding that event that caused the stress or that caused the trauma, so you can shake off the effects of trauma. So in order to return back to normal life and in order to restore the social order, you should keep telling the truth regarding that event. So in Homeboy, Chuck is practicing the same. He gives vent to his feelings and pain before Old Man Khan and other characters in order to come out of his trauma. And broadly speaking, I would say that author H M Naqvi has also practiced the same. So he has also attempted to tell the readers truth regarding the psychological effects of 9/11 on the lives of the Muslims through this novel. So the words of Judith Herman, remembering and telling the truth about terrible events are prerequisites for the restoration of social order and for the healing of the individual victims. So as an example of trauma fiction, allowing the characters to speak the personal trauma they experience by the way of juxtaposition, by improvising the images of the consequences of 9/11, and by interweaving Chuck's trauma with the trauma of Muslim community. H M Naqvi successfully exposes trauma in personal circumstances and as a social phenomena, thereby constructing a helpful map for the restoration of the social order and healing of the collective pain of the Muslims all across the world. And thank you very much.